Barnwood Builders' calm heart, steady, modest, and utterly sincere. Johnny Jett has captivated audiences for years with his skill and charm, transforming discarded wood into artistic creations. But underneath that kind grin is a tale of survival, sacrifice, and adversity. Johnny's life has not been easy, from his upbringing in rural Kentucky to his service in Vietnam. And a startling rumor about his passing drove fans into a frenzy just when it seems he had at last found peace doing what he loved most. Who is the man responsible for the legend, then? What actually became of Johnny Jett? Raised in a close-knit Methodist home, Johnny and his older brother, William Eugene Billy Jett, prioritized family and faith. Growing up in rural Kentucky was straightforward but exciting. Johnny enjoyed exploring, and he recalled a fourth-grade narrative, how he would sneak off to the neighboring creek to swim or fish with his mates during recess. The principal quickly realized what was going on, and they received several lectures as a result of their innocent escapades. He stayed near to home and went to school in Goddard and Flemingsburg. Billy, his older brother, joined the U.S. Army first and was deployed to Vietnam. Billy, who had personally witnessed the destruction caused by war, pleaded with his father to keep Johnny out of the military and encourage him to pursue further education. After high school, Johnny followed that advice and enrolled at Morehead State University. However, it didn't work out. With the exception of one class, Arts and Literature, he failed almost all of his classes and later acknowledged that he had no understanding what the lecturers were talking about. He learned something about himself from that one triumph. A creative streak ran through him. After coming to that revelation, he changed course and enrolled in drafting vocational programs at Maysville Community College. He got his first employment at the Cincinnati Milling Company in Ohio after completing the program. He developed his drafting abilities for a year by devoting himself to board sketching and technical drawings. However, when he was inducted into the Army in 1969, his intentions took a significant turn. Johnny finished his basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, after 6 weeks. However, he was placed in an engineering unit rather than being deployed directly into battle. He was back at the drafting board there, applying the techniques he had studied in school. He was ultimately dispatched to Vietnam in 1971, 2 years later. While traveling from one place to another, he frequently came under fire, but he never had to fire a weapon. Those encounters had an impact. Johnny experienced a difficult moment while he was abroad. In Vietnam, recreational substances such as heroin and marijuana were widely available. It is easy to locate and difficult to avoid. They were a coping mechanism for boredom and the oppressive burden of anxiety and melancholy for many soldiers, including Johnny. His father gave him a job offer at the family's water company when he got back home. It was a familiar job and an opportunity to start over because he had grown up helping his father. Johnny began to heal back home in Kentucky, far from the easy access to drugs. He frequently claimed that his religion got him through that time, believing that even though God didn't create him as an addict, he could use that hardship to his advantage. Johnny eventually started telling his tale in public, giving speeches at treatment centers, and assisting others in overcoming their own addictions. Billy, in the meantime, had already begun a career in carpentry, working on projects that included tearing down and rebuilding historic log cabins. After observing his brother, Johnny decided to attempt creating one for himself. In the end, he discovered an ancient cottage that he wanted to turn into his own, but a brother and sister were still renting it. When the brother moved into a nursing home and the sister died, fate took over. Johnny received an offer from the property owner. If he was prepared to demolish the cabin and rebuild it somewhere else, he could have it. Together, Johnny and Billy accepted the task. They moved each log back to their family farm by hand, as they meticulously disassembled the ancient cabin. They then rebuilt it from the ground up, side by side. The two brothers had a fondness for rustic barns and dilapidated cabins. It was more than a hobby. It had a strong bond between them. However, tragedy came in 1995 when Billy died before completing his last project, a cabin he had been building with pride, patience, and care. Johnny made the decision to complete Billy's work because he was determined to pay tribute to his brother. He brought in Sherman Thompson, his best buddy and a talented carpenter like Billy, to assist him. As they worked together to finish the cabin, something more started to take shape. Johnny told his father that he was leaving his job to launch a cabin company because he loved his job so much. There was no better time. The market for historic log buildings was expanding, and Johnny saw a chance to make their mutual interest a reality. After that, Johnny and Sherman set out to find historic cabins that were 100 years old in rural Kentucky. They would purchase them one by one, disassembling each building with care and neatly piling the ancient timbers in what they dubbed their boneyard. What began as a memorial to Billy gradually developed into a successful company. The two buddies quickly established a reputation as trustworthy providers of old, genuine wood. Additionally, they offered more than simply resources. For those who wished to own a piece of pioneer history, they provided complete restoration services and rebuilt such cabins. Then, fate intervened in 1996. A man named Mark Bowe arrived as Johnny was lounging on his back porch with a paintbrush in hand. Mark was searching for historic cabins while he was in West Virginia, visiting his girlfriend at Morehead State University. He had heard from locals that Johnny was the person to ask if he needed logs from the pioneer era. Since then, the story of their first encounter has spread throughout the community. Mark identified himself and stated that he was considering entering the log cabin industry. Without wasting a beat, Johnny answered that he was considering leaving. The two immediately clicked, despite the discussion. By the end of the summer, Mark had located an astounding 100 cabins, thanks to the assistance of Johnny and Sherman, who were familiar with the terrain. Mark was so impressed that Sherman asked if he would think about hiring them on a full-time basis once he moved some of those structures to his own boneyard in West Virginia. After Mark gave his approval, Johnny and Sherman formally joined his new business, Antique Cabins and Barns, in 1998. Johnny was one of the team's original members because of his background running machinery, disassembling cabins, and reconstructing them from the ground up. His skill and commitment enabled the business to expand throughout the area, laying the groundwork for something even more significant to happen years later. An executive from Silent Crow Productions in New York, named Rick Kaplan, was responsible for that pivotal moment. Rick was on a ski trip with his wife when he chanced to go by the boneyard and saw the eye-catching old cabins stacked there. He paused to talk to Johnny and Sherman out of curiosity, and he soon met Mark. Rick proposed a documentary on their special operation, which would revolutionize the industry. They produced a 20-minute documentary in 2005, which was screened at a number of festivals. They submitted a pilot episode to many television networks because the feedback was so encouraging. However, the time was not favorable to them. Shows like American Chopper, which featured intense on-screen tension and dramatic confrontations, dominated the TV industry at the time. The pilot never lifted off, at least not yet, because the calm artistry and teamwork that went into these cabins didn't suit that description. The crew was offered a role in a reality show a few years later, but they declined it nearly immediately. The artificial pandemonium that dominated reality TV at the time, along with drama, conflicts, and tension, was what the producers intended. Mark Bow, however, had no interest. His group had been working together for years, developing friendships and trust that went beyond business. "I wasn't going to start yelling at my friends just to make good television," he said. Then, something changed. The DIY network had a very different perspective on them. They didn't want forced plot lines or fictitious fights. They desired genuineness. They want to document the team in their natural state, performing the arduous and truthful task of preserving historic barns and homes. Cameras followed the crew as they worked on their projects once filming started, and Mark actively influenced the narrative of their story. He helped develop the structure of each episode, interacted with producers on a regular basis, and finally joined the show's producers. He wanted their skill and pride in their job to be evident in every picture. The response was tremendous when the show aired. The audience adored it. What began as a modest endeavor swiftly grew into something much larger. The production crew requested 13 more episodes right away after being astounded by the ratings. That marked the beginning of the future Barnwood Builders company. Johnny had formally joined the cast by 2013, securing his position in what would turn out to be one of the most adored television teams. As they journeyed around the United States, restoring and restoring historic barns and log cabins, the show followed Mark, Max Hammer, Tim Rose, Graham Ferguson, Johnny Sherman Thompson, and later Alex Webb. However, Barnwood Builders was more than just a building company. It was about keeping history intact. The show appealed to a lot of viewers' deepest nostalgia, the spirit of early America's pioneering. These weren't merely structures. They were historical artifacts in motion. Additionally, the crew handled them with the same respect that archaeologists would show to antiquated antiquities. Every project had a unique backstory. Additionally, the crew took care to learn about the background of each site they worked on. They did more than simply reconstruct historic buildings. They made them come back to life. They made connections with local woodworkers, blacksmiths, and craftspeople along the route. And occasionally they even had the opportunity to see reenactments of living history. Their admiration for the tradition they were protecting grew with each interaction. What set the show apart was its reverence for the past. It was more than just a series on home remodeling. It was entirely grounded in craftsmanship and had elements of reality and documentary. The care that went into lifting each log, restoring each home, and preserving each feature from deterioration was evident to viewers. The group, led by Mark Bowes, did more than simply repurpose old wood. Authenticity was maintained. When a log was no longer usable in one cabin, it was repurposed in another. The main goal was to pay tribute to the pioneers who constructed these buildings by hand long before power tools or other contemporary equipment were invented. Now, a story that delved deeply into American history launched the first episode of Barnwood Builders. In Depot, Indiana, Johnny and the team were sent to salvage timbers from a huge barn. One was first constructed in the 1830s by Josiah Lincoln, the uncle of President Abraham Lincoln. The project was enormous in scope and legacy. The barn's dimensions were 26 feet by 34 feet by 15 feet, and its timber beams weighed up to 200 pounds each. The crew addressed each piece with care and respect for the artistry of that era, since each piece told a narrative. In contrast to contemporary buildings, this barn was put together with wooden pegs rather than nails, a characteristic of 19th century building. Usually, the team would tear off the roof using machines, but there was a catch this time. The owner requested that the trusses, siding, and roof be retained, materials he intended to repurpose for a new barn. For Johnny and his colleagues, the history in those boards made the extra manual labor worthwhile. The group carried the materials all the way to Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains after safely disassembling each beam and plank. There, a contractor would turn the salvaged wood into a brand new, contemporary house, demonstrating that the past may endure in a stunning new form. These kinds of jobs were hard, but the crew made them seem easy. They collaborated with a simple friendship based on trust. According to one of them, they didn't consider themselves as superiors or subordinates, but rather as a close-knit group that operated in unison, with each member understanding what needed to be done and when. Johnny Jett was at the center of that team. Johnny contributed a special fusion of talent, humor, and heart to every effort from the start. He journeyed far into rural America with his crew, taking on projects that turned abandoned cottages and dilapidated barns into living, contemporary wonders. When he climbed into the seat of a large piece of machinery, his true magic sprang to life. He moved with calm skill and accuracy, handling those enormous tools like an artisan. Johnny outworked everyone around him despite being the team's eldest member. He moved with energy and purpose, whether he was pulling off metal sheets or disassembling rafters. His creations demonstrated that, when done with purpose and reverence for the past, even devastation could be an artistic endeavor. Team leader Mark Bowe often remarked that Johnny was the best equipment operator he had ever seen, a true craftsman who maintained his modesty. Johnny became a fan favorite because of his humility. Even on Reddit, where his grandson assisted in answering fan questions during a Q&A, his sense of humor was evident. Johnny remarked that it stemmed from years of practice and not wanting to get off a forklift when someone questioned how he'd gotten so good at it. Beneath the comedy, though, was a guy who cherished his art, his neighborhood, and the splendor of his surroundings. He frequently talked about the amazing places the show took him, with the Four Corners area being one of his favorites. He was enthralled with the huge desert landscapes and their amazing diversity of colors and forms because he was raised in Appalachia's lush greens. Later, the Barnwood Builder team paid a moving homage to Johnny on social media, describing him as a brilliant builder, an artist, a man of faith, and most significantly, a devoted friend. That affection was not limited to the workplace. Many nights were spent sharing stories and creating memories at Johnny's cabin in Fleming County, Kentucky, where he frequently welcomed other cast members. As a testament to the sincere friendships that characterized their relationship both on and off camera, Mark Bowe once remarked that Johnny's house and the neighborhood seemed like a second home to him. The crew occasionally worked on personal restoration projects during gaps in the filming schedule. Long before the show started, Johnny had been restoring buildings from the pioneer era. One day, he came upon an old chapel that was crumbling under its own weight. He rescued the remaining fine timber and started rebuilding it in Fleming County after seeing potential in its bones. The rest of the crew assisted him in dismantling the remainder of the construction after they realized what he was doing. Although it hadn't been scheduled for that season, the production crew soon recognized the moment's beauty and chose to include it on the show. Fans were excited to visit the renowned boneyard, where the crews preserved and refurbished old logs, as Barnwood Builders gained prominence. However, people had to view it from behind the fence due to safety constraints. It was a real operational construction yard rather than a tourist attraction. The show's popularity was partly due to its realism. Instead of staged builds or pre-written drama, Each episode featured actual clients and projects. From the beginning, Mark B. made it apparent that he was committed to being authentic. He refused to convert sincere friendships into TV feuds, turning down early network offers that sought to introduce manufactured drama into the series. He wished to maintain the emphasis on the history, the craft, and the cooperation. That choice was the essence of Barnwood Builders. When Chip and Joanna Gaines changed the station to Magnolia Network in November 2022, the show, which had previously shown on the DIY network, entered a new era. The series gained a new prominence and a larger audience when they individually selected Barnwood Builders to be a part of their new lineup. The risk was profitable. From 60 million homes to almost 500 million worldwide, viewership skyrocketed. However, an unanticipated rumor soon emerged, reminding everyone of how brittle success can be and the reality behind it. Fans of the Barnwood Builders were shocked to learn that Johnny Jett had died. It spread quickly, and to be honest, most people initially thought it was true. It didn't seem feasible, considering the hard nature of his job, hauling huge logs, tearing down old barns, and reconstructing historic cabins. Even for the younger males on the group, the work is physically taxing. People were quick to presume the worst for someone Johnny's age. Viewers had been expressing concerns about Johnny's health even before the prank was revealed. As a result, hysteria broke out when followers discovered an online obituary for a man named Johnny Jett. However, upon closer inspection, everyone saw that the man was not from Houston, Texas at all. The relief came instantly. Hopefully, the erroneous information didn't have a significant impact on Johnny's wife Donna or his grandchildren Jonathan and Nicholas, who were the offspring of his late son Johnny Eugene Jett, who died in 2017. Johnny was shocked to learn of the death hoax himself. In typical Johnny form, however, he accepted it. Instead of becoming angry, he concentrated on the flood of affection and encouraging remarks that ensued. That optimistic attitude fully captures who he is. He is a devout individual who believes that he should follow his Savior wherever he leads. Barnwood Builders fans are aware that Johnny never gives up after a challenging day's labor. He always has a smile on his face and a steady hand, regardless of the temperature. His work ethic and positivity have contributed to the show's uniqueness. He is also fortunate to have a buddy and employer like Mark Bowe, who is devoted to looking after his team. Even the crew members who have been with the ship from the start have been given special attention by Mark. For example, Johnny has a cozy retirement in store for them. Outside of the show, Johnny continues to pursue his artistic interest. His handcrafted rustic creations showcase his profound admiration for craftsmanship and heritage. Fans admire his originality, as seen by the speed with which his work sells online. Johnny has established a stable and satisfying life for himself and Donna, and his estimated net worth is approximately $400. The majority of their personal lives are kept secret. However, that is hardly surprising for someone as grounded and modest as Johnny. His function is still crucial, and he continues to make frequent appearances on Barnwood Builders. Together, Johnny, Mark, and the team have dispelled long-held misconceptions about Appalachian artisans. By redefining what it means to be a hillbilly, they have demonstrated to the world that it truly consists of perseverance, hard work, and pride in one's work. They search for old barns and cabins that need to be saved around the eastern United States as part of their job. Additionally, the crew relies on Johnny to manage any complicated or dangerous tasks. He is invaluable because of his accuracy endurance, and profound regard for the contents. He feels as though he is becoming a part of the narrative each time he restores a piece of history. Johnny is regarded as the composed, competent demolition man in the restoration world, the person who completes the task without any drama or fuss. From the start, he has been a pillar of Barnwood Builders. Furthermore, it's difficult to picture the show without him. The moment when fans discovered the death rumors were untrue, it was all expressed in the collective sigh of relief. It's obvious that neither Johnny nor his co-stars or producers want to slow down. He will continue to do what he loves as long as there are barns to deconstruct and cabins to save. He frequently considers how blessed he is to be able to pursue his passion for a living, serving as a reminder to others that those who are able to do what they love every day are genuinely fortunate. Despite all of his achievements and the notoriety he has acquired over the years, Johnny still considers himself to be an ordinary man. He believes that he has simply been fortunate, and perhaps, as he likes to remark, God has developed a strong affection for